Joining us here is one of the all-time greats in the history of the sport, Hockey Hall of Famer, the man who retired as the highest-scoring left winger in the history of the National Hockey League, a multiple Stanley Cup champion, Luc Robitaille, the president of the Los Angeles Kings. Good to see you, sir. How are you?
Doing well.
You want to answer that poll question? What are you tired of most in terms of sequels?
It seems like there's a lot of sequels for Star Wars.
You're not a fan of the Star Wars sequels right now?
I am, but I don't follow the whole thing. So
you didn't see Solo this weekend?
I didn't see Solo yet. No.
Okay, but you saw last night's game one, correct?
I saw last night.
What'd you think of that? What does somebody like yourself, a big time scorer like yourself, think of 10 goals in game one of a Stanley Cup final, Luke?
10 goals is the amount of goals that we scored in our first series. Both teams, when we lost against Vegas, they scored 7, we scored 3 the entire series in the first round. So it was a great game to watch. It was a lot of fun to watch. It was up and down, and it was every time it seemed like one team would score, the other team was coming down. It was a lot of speed. It was good. It was a good show to watch.
In terms of what you just pointed out, though, 10 goals in the first series between your franchise Kings and the Vegas Golden Knights in 4 games combined, period. And we saw 10 last night. Is this just the wear and tear of a long, grinding second playoff hockey season here?
It just seemed like guys were finding holes last night. There were a few mistakes, maybe nerves. I mean, there were few mistakes that those two teams don't make, and I don't think it's going to happen going forward. The first game, you're all hyped up, and there was, I think, 5 or 6 days between the teams playing, so that does make a difference, but certainly made it for an exciting game.
And when you see a pregame extravaganza, like something that's like Wayne Newton and Mr. Chow were the only Vegas luminaries that seemed to be listed.
Yeah, I think the only ones missing. It was long. The players don't see this, but they certainly are. They're waiting down the hallway, and that's a long time to wait. It just seemed like it was going on forever.
Well, you saw it a couple times, right?
We've seen it a couple times, but they certainly have seemed to soup it up since the first round. They seem to have added like another 4 or 5 minutes to it.
I know. And then Michael Buffer's announcing like it's a prize fight. I mean, my gosh, that did look like a Star Wars sequel out there for a little bit right there. What are we seeing in the Vegas Knights? What can you put in perspective what we're seeing here, Luke?
It's no one predicted that they would get here. Now everyone knew they had a pretty good team. I think they played all year with a lot of speed. You got to give credit to George McPhee. It's like he knew what he wanted. He wanted speed. He wanted these type of players. And then you got to give credit to their coach. They haven't changed from game one. They played the same way. They always seems to have a defenseman jumping up in the play. They play with a tremendous amount of speed. And they're not surprising anyone anymore. They're just coming at you. It's like nonstop. And at the same time, there's something to say about, like, it seemed like every one of their players is playing a little bit above what their expectations are. Like, a lot of guys were having good careers in the NHL, but everybody seems to be playing to another level. And I think it has a lot to do. It seems like they're all in that zone. You call it the zone where they're not playing for statistics. They're playing for the team, and it's amazing the way they're playing.
And so do you think when it's all said and done, I guess, as somebody who's played as long as you did, and now as the president of the Kings as you are, Luc Robitaille, that general managers are kicking themselves across the landscape right now for letting some of these guys go?
I'm not sure they're kicking themselves for letting guys go. I do think the next time around it's going to be different. I think teams like we kind of sat us as an organization, and we knew we can only protect so many guys, and then we were like, well, whomever we lose, we'll lose, and we're going to have to adjust. So we didn't make any trades to make sure we didn't lose a certain player. Mm-hmm. I think in the future, I would be surprised that teams are making as many trades to not lose a certain player. Like Florida made a couple moves, and then they end up giving much more to protect one guy over the other versus, and you still don't know which player Vegas is going to pick when it gets down to the end. So you're playing like it's like poker in a way. And so George McPhee handled it perfectly. He kept his cards really close to himself, and he ended up getting, what no one's talking about. He put up a good team this year, but he racked up a whole bunch of picks too. So for the next 2-3 years, he's got a lot of draft picks, so that's going to help this franchise for the future too.
Yep. We had him on last week, and he's like, anybody who's complaining about the rules, about how it made it, I guess, easier for an expansion team, that those teams accepted this $17 million check from his owner.
Yeah, no, every team, I think, but you got to remember, it was the owners that voted to make it more, to make it that way. I mean, Gary Bettman and Bill Daly in the league kind of changed the format a little bit, and but the owners agreed to it. And they said, yeah, we want a team to come in and have some type of success. We don't want them to be in the bottom, bottom 5 or bottom 10 in the league for 10 years. And that's what happened to a few teams over the expansion. That shouldn't happen.
Luc Robitaille here on the Rich Eisen Show. So Tom Wilson got 3 games for breaking Aston Reese's jaw earlier in these playoffs. Now he hits Marchessault last night. The refs get together, decide not to give him a major penalty. Now this is in the hands, one would think, of the front office of the National Hockey League. Do you think Tom Wilson should be sat in these Stanley Cup finals based on what we saw, Luke?
I'm on the board of governors. So I got to be careful what I say, but I would say the way the rule works, or the way I think the league looks at those hits, is it's time. So from the time the guy gets rid of the puck, and then until he's open, they figure that out. And then does he hit the head? I think if you don't hit the head, it sounds like if he hasn't gotten a call today yet, it sounds like he's going to get away with it. But if you don't hit the head, you probably can get away with it. But it's definitely the time, from the time the puck leaves his stick, was he already coming that way too? There's different ways they're looking at it. They really break it down. The league does a good job at George Peros, who's part of the head of the committee for suspension. They break down the play. I mean, they see literally, we're not seeing all the camera angles they're seeing, so they're probably looking at, was he lining up to hit him? Was the player aware that he was coming? And then look, and then they count the time from the time the puck leaves the stick.
Well, in the National Football League, there's something called a defenseless player. That you're hitting somebody who's defenseless.
Yeah.
And it certainly looked like Marchessault was defenseless. Now, that said, it is the Stanley Cup Finals. You should have your head on a swivel, too, is another way to take a look at it. But he was definitely not, and he wasn't contacted in the head.
Yeah.
But when you're hit that way and you're defenseless, there's the ice that will definitely contact you in the head, or vice versa,
Yeah, he doesn't look like he knew it was coming. I would agree with that. It's definitely it's a hard one. But I know the guys there, like, they're not favoring one player over the other. They know Tom Wilson's he's been caught a few times, so so they're looking at everything, and
But let me take you out of your role as executive, board of governors executive.
Trying to be politically correct here. I don't want to get punished.
I'm noticing that, Luke. Look, I don't want you to get a phone call from Bettman. Although if you do during this conversation, will you let me say hello?
Yeah, I promise you I will.
Pass the phone to me. Hey, Gary, what's up? We're Mishboka. Let's chat. So the thing I want to say, though, is would you, as an old school player, somebody who's played there, who's been there and done that, want to see a rule that there's a defenseless player in hockey in the same way that just merely by itself, he's not expecting it, he's not seeing it, and he's hit like that it's on you as a player not to hit somebody who is defenseless?
I would agree with that. It's on you on not hitting a player that's defensive. I mean, the rule is there. You're supposed to kind of apply it. There's something to say too, is like there's I think I saw Wayne Gretzky get hit once, at center ice, and the reason was a lot of those guys, when they would make a play, you can't just watch your puck, and you could clearly see there the kid is watching his puck. Now, doesn't mean there's a right to hit that player, but I think it's like there's that, I can't remember what it is. It's like either 1 second or, a tenth of a second, or half a second. I don't know what the timing is, but definitely you can't hit guys from behind, and you can't hit guys to the head. And if a player is totally defenseless, absolutely, we got to protect the players first.
And do you think somebody's reputation should play into this?
Yep, I think it does. The league keeps track of all the guys that keep doing it over and over, and absolutely, I wouldn't say the reputation as much as if the guy has a habit of doing it. Absolutely, it does. Yeah. What's
the dirtiest hit you've ever been on the receiving end of?
dirtiest hit I've ever been part of, probably Craig Simpson hit me real hard at center ice when I wasn't looking. Kind of like that, but he caught me in the head. And I would say Mark Tenorti. Mark Tenorti, I was in Minnesota. He hit me so hard that my stick flew in the stands. I got up. I didn't know what. This is like pre when we knew how to handle concussion. And I was kind of out, and I was looking for my stick. I couldn't find it. Came back to the bench. They gave me a little sniffer, and he went back and played. It was crazy in those days.
So who's the one who enforced that action on your team? Who's the one who came out and enforced it on your behalf after something like that hit?
No, the one on Craig Simpson, there was no one, but we always had Marty McSorley to take care of us. He was always there helping us. on the Mark Tenorti one, I got him later, which I was very happy. Yeah, and he was like, "Are you kidding me?" I think he couldn't believe that I got him, but I think he got a kick out of it that I got him back.
Okay, I like it. I'd like to take a break, come back, and talk a little bit about your history with the Cup. I want the best Cup story that you're able to tell in public. I want that. And then I want to go down like some Gretzky, and obviously you played a couple years with the Penguins.
Yep.
So you were around greatness quite a bit in your career as being great in your own right. Luc Robitaille is here. Doug Marrone of the Jacksonville Jaguars will also join us here on this edition of the Rich Eisen Show in hour number 2. That has a visit from Ralph Macchio, and I will draw a line between the NBA Finals, LeBron James and Ralph Macchio, and Cobra Kai. Yeah.
Wow.
Did you ever?
Ralph Macchio.
Yeah. Yes.
The Karate Kid.
That guy.
All right.
I'm hoping he gets here early, so when we say goodbye to you, that there is a Luc Robitaille, Ralph Macchio crossing of paths. I'm very proud of those things here on the Rich Eisen Show. Back with more in a moment. Welcome back. Luc Robitaille here is part of the Insider Report, brought to you by Honda, the official vehicle of the National Hockey League. And with the spacious Honda Pilot, it has seating up to 8. You need to hurry into your local Honda dealer and check out the Honda Pilot today. Luc Robitaille here. I mean, the players that you played with in your career, I mean, you could not have been surrounded by such greatness. And again, you retired as the greatest scoring left winger in NHL history. You won your Cup in Detroit.
Yep.
And on that team was, go ahead, lay it out for me here.
I mean, we counted the other day, when it's all said and done, adding Pavel Datsyuk, there was 10 players that will be in the Hall of Fame. It's amazing, out of 20. It's incredible. It was like Nick Lidstrom, Steve Yzerman, Dominic Hasek, Brett Hall, Shanahan, Pavel Datsyuk, Chris Chelios, Igor Larionov, and I'm missing 2. Fedorov.
Yeah.
I'm missing another one that was, that's going to be upset at me. But
and who,
Pavel Datsyuk too.
Yeah, and the coach was
Scotty Bowman. I mean, it was the pre-cap era where they were allowed to put a team together that was it was pretty special. I mean, we finished first overall and went through the entire playoffs. I mean, it wasn't easy, but we had a great team.
A couple of years in Madison Square Garden you spent.
Yeah, that was fun with Marc Messier. That was pretty special to play with.
2 years with the Penguins?
The big boy, yeah. No, the Penguins, I was there 1 year because there was a lockout one year. That's the year Mario, unfortunately, didn't play. He had the bad back, but I got to play. I think it was really Jágr's big year coming out. That was he had won the Cup before, but that was the year where he led the league in scoring. Ron Francis was there. It was a pretty special team too.
And then, of course, the great one here in Los Angeles.
That was my idol, growing up. So it's pretty cool to get to play with him. That was pretty special.
What was that like, Luc, here in Los Angeles?
It was really hard for me at first because, when I was, we're like 5 or 6 years apart. So when he was 18, I was 12, 13, and watching him, when you're 12 and 13, you watch someone, you idolize him. And when I got to play with him and he got traded to LA, I remember they put me with him, and I think it was like game 2 when I was playing with him, and we're coming down to 2-on-1, and I want to give him the perfect pass because when Gretzky, I want to, and as I pass it to him, the defenseman stops it, and Wayne comes back to the bench, and he wasn't doing it maliciously. He just said, "Hey, Lucky," he goes, "next time, just give it to me early." He goes, "I'll give it back to you. Don't worry." I'm like, he's got a good point, you know. So for the next month, I think every single time I touched the puck, it was like a grenade. I just like threw it at him, like it was like here. So finally, the coach came to me and he says, "I'm going to take you off his line." He goes, "You're not even trying to make a play anymore. You just keep giving him the puck." But it was, I was really nervous. It took me almost a year to really start talking with him or treating him like a normal person,
Like a colleague.
Yeah, I know. Like it wasn't like that for me. It was like I was very intimidated around him always.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Montreal.
Montreal.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you're a perfect person to ask this question too.
Oh.
The Marty McSorley stick
Yeah.
that was taken out of play in that Stanley Cup Finals against the Montreal Canadiens, where you're now taking on the Canadiens,
Yeah.
and the fact that Canada, ever since that, has not won a cup since. Do you think that was a curse that was placed on the country as a whole?
I don't know.
The fact that they took McSorley's stick out of play in that Stanley Cup Finals.
I don't know if it was put on the entire country, but I got stories about that curve. I mean,
Please.
I know they measured it. Like their trainers came out and measured some sticks right before the game. There were 2 stick racks right by their locker room, and that was a deal for them. And they told the policeman to look the other way, and they grabbed a bunch of. One of them was mine, Marty, and Thomas Sandstrom, and Alex Zitnik.
Hold on a minute. Let's back up here. So before this Stanley Cup game, the one in which the stick was removed, or prior to?
What happened is you have a stick rack, and you always have 2 or 3 sticks. So what happened? Someone in their organization, I don't know who, came and grabbed 3 or 4 sticks, took them in a room, measured them, put them back, so they knew which one was illegal. And the reason I know that is like 7 years later, this policeman that used to work around the locker room was always really nice to him. Whenever LA would come in, he'd ask me for something. I'd give him a stick or something for his kids or grandkids. Finally, one day he came to me, he says, "I need to apologize to you for something." I go, "Really, what?" He goes, "I was there." I go, "You were there where?" He goes, they told me to look away, and they measured a bunch of sticks. So that's the only reason I know that.
Well, that changed the Stanley Cup Final that year.
Oh, yeah, it changed. I mean, we lost the next 2 games. We lost, actually, even that game, even though they scored to make it 2-2, we went to overtime. They scored. And then the next 2 games were big overtime games in LA. We could have won those games. I mean, Patrick Roy was really a difference maker, but, you're up 2-1 with couple minutes left, definitely you'd rather not be on a penalty kill than killing a penalty. But I'm not sure it was only that stick. I think, losing those games in overtime and Patrick Roy was the biggest difference maker.
Well, I mean, you're going high class here, but at some point, somebody from the Canadiens organization told the policeman to turn around and start grabbing the
I'm
stick,
not sure I'm going to put on the entire country, but definitely, definitely it wasn't right of them to doing that, because it's hard to pick out like an illegal curve. It's really hard. So you kind of had to make sure, and so. But that's the way it goes here. But the rule was there. The rule was there. You had to have your stick legal. Yeah. So the rule was there for us to obey it, and if it's part of the rule, it's part of the rule.
Luc Robitaille here. A couple more minutes in the Insider Report, brought to you by Honda. Now you are an executive. Okay. I mean, you've been part of 2 cup wins as an executive. Better as an executive or a player? What do you got?
Well, you never know what it takes to win a championship until you win a championship. And so I'm glad I won as a player, because you kind of understand what it does for the team and the trainer, because, winning a Stanley Cup, it's 2 months. It's like it's like going at war almost for 2 months, where it's very special. When you win as an executive, you realize it influences that many more people. I don't think as a player you realize what it does for a city, and season seat holders have been supporting a franchise for 40 years and so forth. And so for me, it was very interesting to see both sides. That being said, too, I love that I was part of the organization for the first time we won the Cup in LA. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I bet. Certainly, since, again, those Canadiens snuck that stick out of there.
Exactly.
What's your best Cup story that you can tell in public?
The best Cup story I could tell in public, well, there's a lot that probably, I think before us, there's better stories, because now there's a guardian. They really guard it. For me, it was like when I was in Detroit, they lent me the Cup, and my family had come, and we just rented. There was no car to rent, and so my wife had this small car, and Ken Holland, the GM, said, "Why don't you take it for the day?" And we didn't know what to put in the car. So my kids and my wife were in the car, so we put it on the passenger seat. Just put a seatbelt around it, and the kids were in the back, and we're driving on Detroit. We're going through. We just had an apartment because my family was still in L.A., and so we're driving, and we'd stop at a red light, and in Detroit, people were going nuts. They're like, "Is that the Stanley Cup?" But it didn't make sense. It was like just this tiny little car. It was a Honda. And but it made it for like a fun day, and then we took it back home, and got to enjoy where our kids put popcorn in it, watch a movie. It was really special.
I love it. Honda, the official car of the Stanley Cup, sitting shotgun in the city of Detroit. I love it. Good to see you, Luc Robitaille.
Great to see you.
This is a lot of fun. You're just down the road, right?
Yeah, we're just down the road.
It was like a 2-minute drive here, right?
Literally, I think it was less than that.
Fantastic. Well, we're geographically sound. We'd love to have you. Okay, a big fan of yours for all these years.
I saw you skating. Maybe we'll get you on the ice again.
Yeah, I think I need some help. I need some help. My 9, 7, and 4-year-olds are already literally skating rings around me. But that said, we also saw video of Brockman find his own 5-hole trying to shoot
pretty
it
terrible.
on the net.
That's pretty bad.
It's very rare. Good to see you, Luc Robitaille. Thanks for being here.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.